So we'll work through some examples with singles matches, and then I'll get into doubles matches afterwards. All right, well, I like to do this just by doing examples, just jumping into some examples. I think that's the easiest way to sort of understand what's going on here. So the first, again, I mentioned we're going to talk singles matches first, but the first part of the video is really just going to be focused on this number here, your performance rating for a particular match. We'll get into how this is calculated eventually as well. But what the first thing feeds into the second thing. So it's important to understand this number first, how it calculates your performance during that match itself. Okay, so let's look at this example. This match was played on December 10th, 2023, between Ajay Goyal, that's my brother. He's also a 3.5. So between Ajay Goyal and James Oakes, okay, singles match. And going into the match, Ajay was rated, his dynamic rating was a 3.46, and going into the match, James's dynamic rating was a 3.49. Now, Ajay won the match, and the score was 4-6, 7-6, 1-0. What's important, the only thing that's important about this score is the percentage of the games that AJ won. Okay? So AJ won 4 plus 7 plus 1, that's 12 games. James won also 6 plus 6, if you look in the right column, 6 plus 6, he won 12 games. So they both won 12 games. It doesn't really matter that Ajay won the match or that Ajay won 2 sets and James only won 1 set. None of that matters. All that matters is that Ajay won 12 games, James won 12 games. Therefore, Ajay won 50% of the games. %50 of the games were won by Ajay. So, based on that number, what the system does is it looks at James's previous rating, previous dynamic rating, or current dynamic rating, I should say, going into the match. James was a 3.49. And what the system basically does, it says, well, Ajay won exactly the same number of games as James. Therefore, Ajay performed in this match at exactly the same level as James going into the match. Now, it's going to assume that James, for the purpose of this calculation, it's going to assume that James also performed at a 3.49. That was, in fact, his dynamic rating going into the match, so it makes an assumption, which is a fair assumption, that James played at a 3.49. Now, of course, it's possible James had a bad day or James had a really good day. All of those things are possible, but the system doesn't know that. It just assumes that James played at his level, which is 3.49, and then it deduces that, well, since Ajay won exactly 50% of the games, the same number of games that James has won, it's going to say that AJ's performance in this match was a 3.49. That is, whatever James's rating was, that was how well AJ performed in this match, a 3.49, given the fact that they won the same number of games. So that's a fairly easy example because they both won exactly 12 games. Let's go to a different example. I think I'm going to scroll up here. Yeah, this top match here, January 13th. Okay. Let me erase all this, or let me just scroll it out of view here. Okay, so this match, Ajay going into it was a 3.49, and I'm getting that by looking at this number here. This was Ajay's dynamic rating going into this top match here on January 13th, 3.49. And Nate Nate Fullington was a 3-6-5 going into the match. Now, Ajay won. Ajay also won this match. Ajay won 13 games, a 6 plus 6 plus 1. So he won 13 games. And Nate won 10 games, the 7 plus 3 on the right side. Again, the games are all that matters. It doesn't matter who won the match or who won how many sets, just the total number of games. Okay, so what's the percentage here? So Ajay won 13 out of a total of 23 games. So what does that come to in terms of a percentage? For this, I'm going to need my calculator. I can't do this one in my head. So 13 divided by 23 times 100 is 56.52%. So from Ajay's perspective, he won 56.52% of the games. Okay. What does that mean? Well, it's a little bit more complicated than just 50%. If it was just 50%, we know Ajay performed exactly the same as Nate. But Ajay actually performed a little bit better than Nate. So what this means is that there's a performance gap here. So in this example, the performance gap between Ajay and Nate basically it has to be looked up in a table. I will show you what the relationship is between the percentage of games won and the performance gap, but it's not a relationship that has an easy formula, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. But for now, let's just look it up in a table. So I've got a table here, and let's just find 56.2 in our table. Sorry, what did I say? 56.52. So here's 56.52. Percentage of games won, that's what this column is. Percentage of games won, and then the corresponding performance gap. So 56.52 has a performance gap of 0.07. Or actually, more precise, I'm only showing 2 decimal places here, but really the number is 0.687. So the performance gap is 0.0687 by looking it up in the table. So what that means is that Ajay performed this much better than Nate in this particular match. So we take Nate's rating going into the match, and we add 0.687 to that. Scroll down a little bit here. And so we add those two together, and we get 3.7187 or 3.72 rounded to the hundredths place. And that's what this number right here indicates, is that Ajay performed at a 3.72 during this specific match. That's not his new rating, but that's how he performed in this match. And that's how we got there, by taking Nate's rating going into the match and adding in the performance gap, which is based on the percentage of games won. Hope that's starting to make sense. Now at this point, you're probably all hoping that there's some kind of easier way to calculate all this rather than doing all this manual arithmetic. And to that end, I created this spreadsheet, which I have shared in the link. There's a link in the comments below this video, and that link will take you right to the spreadsheet. Now you will have access to a read-only copy of this view-only. It's a Google Sheet. You'll have a view-only access to this spreadsheet, so you won't be able to come in here and type stuff in. But if you just click on File and then Make a Copy, I'm not sure where my menus are. My menus disappeared. There are my menus. no, let's just do this for a second. If you go to File, Make a Copy, then you will be able to copy this spreadsheet to your own account, and then you can edit it as much as you want. Okay, so let's do another example, but this time using the spreadsheet. So I want to go to another match. Let's go to this one up here. Now this one's a loss, so we haven't done a loss yet. So let's do this one. And I'm going to show you how to use the spreadsheet to solve for this for Ajay's performance in this match. Okay. So Ajay's current dynamic rating going into the match, it was a 3.50. So I'm going to enter 3.50 there. And then his previous dynamic rating one match ago. So I'm just going to go down the column to the next match in the same category. Again, if there were mixed doubles matches and combo matches mixed in here, I would have to skip over them. But he doesn't have any of those, which makes it easy. So I just go down to the next one. Before his last match, he was a 3.55, so I'm going to enter that here. And then before that match, he was a 3.49. Now, why do I need these? I didn't need these before when I was doing all the math by hand, so why do I need them now? Well, I don't technically need them in order to calculate his performance in the match I'm interested in, but I do need them to calculate his final dynamic rating after the match, so I'm entering them in there just for completeness. And then his opponent's dynamic rating before the match began, and we're interested in this top match here on January 20th. Opponent's rating was a 3.72, so I'm going to enter that there. And then we're going to enter the score. And again, be careful that you enter the scores with your own scores on the left and your opponent's scores on the right, which may be different than how it's listed here. And in fact, in this case, it is. Because in this case, since Ajay lost the match, his score was a 3 and the opponent got a 6 in the first set. And then it was a 4-6 in the second set. So I'm not quite writing it in the same order as it's listed here. You got to be a little careful. Your own games and then your opponent's games on the right. And of course, all the spreadsheet is doing is it's adding up how many games you won divided by the total number of games played and coming up with a percentage. So in this case, Ajay won 36.84% of the total games played, and that's really what matters. Ignore this for now. This is just the rating gap between Ajay and Steven, before the match began. So again, Ajay was a 3.50 before the match began. Steve was a 3.72 before the match began. So there's a difference there of minus 0.22. Ajay was underrated by 0.22 relative to his opponent. Okay, so anyway, this is the percentage of games won. And then again, all it's doing is doing a lookup in this table, 36.84%. We find that row in the table, and the performance gap is minus 0.15, meaning that minus 0.15, I pulled it from the table, meaning that Ajay performed 0.15 lower than Steven in this match, because Ajay won fewer games than Steven did. So Ajay performed worse than Steven. How much worse? 0.15 worse than Steven. Well, that's pretty much all there is to this example. If Steven was at a 3.72 before the match began, and we know that Ajay performed 0.15 worse than Steven during the match, then Ajay's performance during this match was a 3.57. That is exactly 3.72 minus 0.15 is a 3.57. So that was Ajay's performance during the match. And his new dynamic rating is a 3.53. Again, we'll get into that and how that's calculated in a bit. But the main thing is this is how well he performed during the match.